Frank Sinatra's dressing room door opened. He didn't look up. He already knew Bob Dylan was standing there. 1965. The Sands Hotel in Las Vegas. 2 dressing rooms on the same hallway. One belonged to the greatest voice of the previous generation. The other to the voice that was tearing that generation apart. Frank Sinatra sat in his leather chair, a glass of whiskey on the small table beside him, sheet music in his hands that he wasn't really reading. His suit was dark and perfect except for the loosened tie. The dressing room smelled like cigarettes and old cologne and the particular kind of silence that comes before difficult conversations. He'd known Dylan would come. Word traveled fast in these venues. The kid was playing down the street at some folk club, had been asking around about Sinatra's schedule, had somehow gotten backstage access. Sinatra's people had told him. He'd said to let the kid through if he showed up. And now here he was. Bob Dylan stood in the doorway, backlit by the harsh fluorescent hallway lights that made his wild hair look even wilder. He held a harmonica in one hand, turning it over and over with nervous fingers. He was 24 years old and he'd just gone electric at Newport, and half his audience had booed him, and the other half had declared him a genius, and he didn't know which group was right. He'd come to Las Vegas because he was running. From the folk purists who said he'd betrayed the movement. From the rock critics who said he wasn't rock enough. From everyone who wanted him to be the voice of a generation when all he'd ever wanted was to write songs. And somehow, standing in a backstage hallway at 2 in the morning, Dylan had decided he needed to talk to the one person who might understand what it meant to carry a voice you didn't ask for. Sinatra still hadn't looked up. The silence stretched. 30 seconds. A minute. Dylan shifted his weight, started to speak, stopped. The harmonica kept turning in his fingers. Finally, without raising his eyes from the sheet music, Sinatra spoke. "You gonna stand there all night, kid, or you gonna say what you came to say?" Dylan's voice came out rougher than he'd intended. "I don't know what I came to say." "Then sit down until you figure it out." Sinatra gestured to a chair against the wall without looking at it. Dylan moved slowly into the room, letting the door close behind him. The harsh hallway light disappeared, replaced by the warm amber glow of the dressing room bulbs. He sat. The chair was uncomfortable. "You want a drink?" Sinatra asked. "No." "Smart. This stuff'll kill you." Sinatra took a sip anyway. "So, Bob Dylan. The folk hero who went electric. The protest singer who doesn't want to protest anymore. The voice of your generation." He finally looked up. His eyes were tired. "How's that working out for you?" Dylan didn't answer immediately. He looked at Sinatra, really looked at him. The man was 50 years old. Still handsome. Still commanding. But there was something in his face that Dylan recognized. A weight. The kind that comes from being called the voice of something for so long you forget you're supposed to be a person first. Dylan didn't explain himself. He never did. "They booed me," Dylan said finally. "At Newport. Half the audience booed when I plugged in the electric guitar. Like I'd killed someone. Yeah, I heard about that. My own people. The ones who'd been there from the beginning. They acted like I betrayed them." Sinatra set down his glass. "You think that's the first time someone's been booed for changing? Kid, they crucified me when I left Tommy Dorsey's band. Said I was nothing without the orchestra. Said I'd be forgotten in a year." He paused. That was 1942. Dylan's fingers finally stopped turning the harmonica. "But you were doing what they wanted eventually. Singing the standards. Being smooth. I'm doing the opposite. I'm walking away from what made them love me. Are you asking my permission?" "No." "Good. Because I wouldn't give it to you." Sinatra leaned back in his chair. The leather creaked. "You know what your problem is, Dylan? You think you owe them something. The focus. The protest crowd. The ones who want you to be their spokesman. You think because they made you famous, you have to stay in the box they built for you. Don't I?" "No." Sinatra's voice was flat. Final. You owe them good music. That's it. You don't owe them your soul. You don't owe them your truth. And you sure as hell don't owe them your future. The room fell quiet again. Somewhere down the hall, a door opened and closed. Voices murmured. The sounds of a casino filtered up through the floor. Slot machines, laughter, the particular acoustics of people trying to have fun. Dylan looked at the harmonica in his hands. They want me to be political. Every interview, every concert, they want me to talk about the war, about civil rights, about everything that's wrong with the world. And I care about those things, but... He stopped. But you're tired of being a symbol. Yeah. Sinatra picked up his whiskey glass, looked at it, set it down again without drinking. I'll tell you something nobody tells you when you get famous, kid. Once they decide what you mean to them, they don't let you be anything else. You become a repository for their hopes, their anger, their need for someone to say what they can't say. And the weight of that. He shook his head. It'll crush you if you let it. How do you not let it? You disappoint them. Sinatra's voice carried no regret. Just fact. You disappoint them over and over until they realize you're not their property. You're not their voice. You're just a man who sings songs. Some of them will hate you for it. Some will leave. But the ones who stay, the ones who love the music instead of the symbol, those are the only ones worth keeping. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most important part of this story is still unfolding. Dylan stood up. He walked to the mirror lined with bulbs, looked at his own reflection. His hair was impossible. His face was young but already showing the wear of too many expectations. He looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. Newport wasn't about music, he said quietly. It was about control. They wanted to control what I am, what I can become. And when I picked up that electric guitar, he stopped. I realized I'd rather have them hate me for what I am than love me for what I'm not. Sinatra stood too. He moved to stand beside Dylan at the mirror. Two men looking at their own reflections. One at the peak of his powers. One just discovering his. You came here for absolution, Sinatra said. It wasn't a question. Maybe. I can't give you that. Nobody can. You're the only one who knows if you're making the right choice. Dylan turned away from the mirror. What if I'm not? What if I lose everything? The audience, the respect, the whole thing I built? Then you lose it. Sinatra's voice was gentle but unyielding. And you build something else. Or you don't. But at least you'll know you didn't spend your life in someone else's cage. Dylan pulled out his harmonica, looked at it like he was seeing it for the first time. The instrument that had defined him for years. Simple. Acoustic. Pure folk tradition. He turned it over in his hands. They want this Dylan, he said, holding up the harmonica. The one who plays for the people. Who sings protest songs in coffee shops. Who stays small and pure and angry on their behalf. And what do you want? Dylan was quiet for a long moment. Then he slipped the harmonica into his pocket. I want to find out what happens when I stop asking permission to evolve. Sinatra smiled, a real smile, not the performer's smile. Good. That's the first honest thing you've said since you walked in here. Away from the spotlight, Dylan made a choice no one expected. Dylan moved toward the door. His hand was on the knob when Sinatra spoke again. Dylan. He turned. You know what separates the greats from the forgotten? Sinatra didn't wait for an answer. The forgotten ones spend their whole careers trying to be what people wanted them to be in their first success. The greats have the courage to disappoint. Dylan nodded slowly. One more thing. Sinatra picked up the sheet music he'd been holding when Dylan entered. He looked at it for a moment, then held it out. I was supposed to record this next month. It's a standard. Beautiful melody. Written in 1952. The label's been pushing me to do it for years. Dylan took the sheet music. He looked at the title, the notes, the classic arrangement marks. Standard Sinatra territory. "I'm not going to record it," Sinatra said. "I'm giving it to you." "Why?" "Because it's a love song. Simple. Classic. Everything you're supposed to hate right now. Everything that's safe and commercial and not what your folk audience wants from you." Sinatra's eyes held something Dylan couldn't quite name. "I want to see what you do with it. If you have the guts to take something from my world and make it yours. Or if you're just running from one expectation to another." Dylan stared at the sheet music. "This is a test." "Everything's a test, kid. The question is whether you're testing yourself or letting others test you." Dylan folded the sheet music carefully and put it in his jacket pocket, next to the harmonica. 2 objects. 2 worlds. 2 versions of who he could become. "Thank you," he said. Sinatra waved it off. "Don't thank me. Just don't waste it." "And Dylan?" He paused. "Stop running. From the folkies, from the rockers, from everyone. Just stand still long enough to figure out what you actually believe. The music will follow." Dylan opened the door. The harsh hallway light flooded in again, harsh and unforgiving compared to the warm amber glow of the dressing room. He stood in the doorway for a moment, silhouetted, 1 foot in Sinatra's world and 1 foot out. "See you around, Francis," he said. "Maybe," Sinatra replied. "Or maybe we'll just keep missing each other for the next 30 years while everybody tries to make us fight." Dylan smiled, a rare genuine smile. "Probably that one." He left. The door closed. Sinatra sat back down in his leather chair, picked up his whiskey, and stared at the space where Dylan had been standing. What followed stayed with everyone who witnessed it, long after the sound faded. What happened next became the subject of myth and speculation for decades. Bob Dylan never recorded the song Sinatra gave him. But 6 months later he released, "Like a Rolling Stone," 6 minutes of electric fury that changed rock and roll forever. The folk purists hated it. The establishment didn't know what to make of it. And Dylan didn't apologize for any of it. Frank Sinatra, in interviews years later, was asked about Dylan dozens of times. He always gave the same answer. "He's a good kid. Makes noise I don't understand. But he's honest about it." But there was one interview, one single television appearance in 1987, where Sinatra was asked if he'd ever given Dylan advice. Sinatra had paused, stared into the camera with that tired wisdom only decades can give you, and said, "I gave him a song once. He never used it. That's how I knew he'd be fine." The interviewer had pressed, "What song?" "Doesn't matter," Sinatra replied. "Point is, I gave him something safe. Something that would have made everyone happy. And he had the guts to leave it in his pocket and do something that made everyone confused instead. That's an artist." Dylan, for his part, never spoke about the meeting publicly. Not in interviews. Not in his memoir. Not anywhere. The sheet music Sinatra gave him remained in his archive, untouched, unrecorded, a reminder of the road not taken. But in 1992, when Frank Sinatra turned 77, Dylan sent him something. A harmonica. The same one he'd been holding that night in Las Vegas. No note. No explanation. Sinatra kept it on his piano for the rest of his life. When Sinatra died in 1998, Dylan was asked to comment. He released a single sentence. "Frank taught me that disappointing people honestly is better than pleasing them dishonestly." The dressing room at the Sands Hotel was demolished in 1996. The building's gone. The hallway's gone. The leather chair, the whiskey glass, the warm amber lights, all of it erased. But the choice made in that room, the permission 2 men gave each other to disappoint their audiences in service of their truth, that echoes still. Share and subscribe. Some stories deserve to be remembered. Because the lesson wasn't about music. It was about refusing to be a monument while you're still alive. Dylan kept evolving. Kept changing. Kept frustrating everyone who wanted him to stay frozen in 1963. And every time someone asked why he couldn't just be the protest singer again, somewhere in his mind was Sinatra's voice, "You don't owe them your future." The sheet music still exists. In an archive. Unplayed. A symbol of the thing Dylan had the courage not to become.